I'm Ashley Michaels, and this is Colorado Point of View. It is official. Colorado has a balanced budget for the next fiscal year. Here's the moment Governor Jared Polis signed it into law on Monday. Comes after months of uncertainty as lawmakers were facing more than $1 billion budget shortfall heading into these budget talks.
A lot of hours and time went into writing this document. This balanced, bipartisan budget, holding strong reserves for an uncertain future. Make smart investments to protect what matters most, including education, public safety, and health care.
Well, joining us more to talk about it this week, we have State Senator Barbara Kirkmeyer. Thanks so much for being here. Always a pleasure to have you in studio with us.
Thank you.
Now, we last talked with you, I think it was December, before you guys got to work with the Joint Budget Committee working on this budget. And when we talked last time, you had said you were really concerned about cuts to health care. So now that we're on the other side of this, I want to get your perspective. Was this as difficult of a process as you expected?
Yes. We talked about it on the Joint Budget Committee about trying to have a smooth landing this year, knowing that when you're in a structural deficit, it's not a one-year problem. It's not like you fix that in 1 year, constant overspending like we have done for the last 6 years. So we were trying to have a smooth landing. I think we sort of kind of got there. I jokingly said at one point, it was like that flight. We missed the runway. If we were gliding in as a plane, we missed the runway and we landed in the Hudson. But the good news is everyone survived.
Okay, so we'll talk about the good and the bad.
Yeah.
Let's start with the good. What are some of the positive things that you guys were able to work on that you're really happy with in the budget?
So funding education for one. So the governor, when he came in with his request in November, was $150 million short of funding education, which just is not acceptable. So we finally, and it was on the last day before we closed the budget, we voted on education, so K-12 education, we voted on higher education, and we voted on Medicaid provider rates. Our three, in my perspective, our three most critical things that we're supposed to be doing as a government. And we waited till the very last day to vote on the three most important things, priorities, right? So it's crazy to me. So it was difficult. It was a lot of pushing and shoving and things going on, but we got there. It's, as I said that same day when the governor signed the budget, we're required to have a balanced budget in the state of Colorado. That means for more than just one day. Just because you signed a balanced budget doesn't mean like tomorrow it can go out of balance. We should still be working to uphold our constitutional mandates. And we still have a lot of work to do because this year we did things like sweep a lot of cash funds, sweep interest off of funds, one-time spending things again. So there's at least about $400 million worth of one-time spending in this budget. And then we know that because of the School Finance Act that's now going through right now, in fact, we're voting on it today, probably on the floor on seconds, that will increase funding to education. It's like, where does the money come from? Medicaid rates are still going to go up. Medicaid is still going to be expensive. We've expanded a lot in the last 6 years, expanded Medicaid, and we're probably going to have to pull back on some things.
What are some of the areas where you're not so happy with how this budget ended up?
I'm not happy that we did a bunch of one-time spending again. I'm not happy that departments and the executive branch and the judicial branch thought it was okay that, hey, if we sweep our cash funds or use our cash funds to fund what is now general funded operated, folks, that's okay. We cut things, and we didn't. We didn't get anywhere close to the amount of cuts that we needed to do. There were programs that are like, I'm like, seriously, is this program in, animal welfare? Is it more important than child welfare? Things of that nature. And I think, though, this year, it was going to take this year to get the other 94 legislators on board and start understanding cuts are going to have to happen, and they didn't happen this year. And like I said, I think we'll start off this next year easily $500 million in the hole again, easily.
And we'll talk more about next year here in just a minute. But before
Sure.
we move on from this year's budget, I want to ask you, and this could either be positively or negatively, where do you think Coloradans are going to feel the most impact of the work that you guys did?
I think low-income folks will feel a lot of impact because not necessarily from the budget, but a bill that I was just able to pass that increases spending and increases dollars for our provider safety net in healthcare. So we actually came through working with hospitals. Hopefully we'll be able to pull down about $100 million. We funded $100 million, again, working with hospitals who are going to contribute $40 million of that. And that should help fund our safety provider net and our healthcare and help stabilize that healthcare system that, quite frankly, is in crisis mode. I mean, we have 25 counties that have maternal healthcare desert in Colorado. That is just not acceptable. So I think they'll feel it there. I don't think we did as much as we needed to do in the Medicaid provider rates. We increased them at 1.6% when inflation was at 2.4. So still effectively it's kind of a cut, but at least we were able to get some increases there. I know a lot of people felt good about that because I got a lot of emails on it. So there are things of that nature. And then I think today Senator Kolker and I had an amendment to the School Finance Act and Appropriations, which would guarantee that we have to prioritize. We put a marker down and that we guarantee that we will have to prioritize education funding and fund kids and education first in our budget.
Now, the Colorado Sun is reporting this week that lawmakers may need to come back for a special session this summer in case there are federal cuts to Medicaid. Is that something that you guys are anticipating? And if that were to happen, how does Colorado deal with it?
I know everybody likes to kind of threaten that or scare everybody and say that we're coming back for a special session, and they very well could cut some of the Medicaid stuff. But we have provisions in place that I don't know that we necessarily would have to come back. It would have to depend on how severe cuts there are, if there truly are a lot of cuts. And when does that actually impact our budget, and when does that impact the state? So we'll see. I mean, I'm not into the point of view of my colleagues across the aisle who want to say our budget problems are because of Tabor or they're because of Trump. Trump hasn't done anything at this point, and Tabor is not the issue. The overspending from my colleagues across the aisle in this executive branch is what our issue is with our structural deficit.
Okay, so I want to get back to next year's budget. You alluded to that, and we've been hearing from a lot of folks, yourself included, that these cuts may be more painful next year. I mean, what do we realistically expect?
Well, as I tell my colleagues on the Joint Budget Committee, they like to refer to this year as they had to rip off the Band-Aid. And I told them next year you're going to need a tourniquet to stop the bleeding, because we are actually going to have to get into cutting budgets and cutting programs that are within our departments. I mean, inflation is at 2.4%. We increased general fund operating expenses by 3.6%. So we didn't cut. And that's what we are going to have to do next year. We are still in a structural deficit.
Let's turn to the end of the legislative session. So you and your colleagues have just a few days left. I know you're very busy. Walk us through, what are some of the priorities in these last few days? What are you guys working on?
Priorities that we're working on, and I'm working on these in a bipartisan fashion. We are working on healthcare and funding the safety provider net, right? And trying to stabilize that. That bill made it through the Senate. It is now over in the House. Hopefully it just got out of committee, so hopefully it gets out of committee. I mean, we are literally in the last, 5 or 6 days. I don't know if we're working over the weekend or not. We could be. I'm anticipating we'll be working on Saturday. I don't know about Sunday at this point. But so we're still working on healthcare. There's still a lot of insurance programs that are coming through that are going to cost and increase insurance. So affordability is still the issue. And I just don't understand why they think, again, my friends and colleagues across the aisle, why they think that we should be increasing insurance and premium costs for folks. And, really looking at affordability. School Finance Act has not been approved yet. It has gone through the House. It is now in the Senate. We've still got to get it through there. There were amendments in the Senate, so it means it has to go back to the House. We've got to get all that done by the 7th, May 7th.
Okay, so do you think that this was a productive year compared to your other years in the legislature? How do you feel like this year compares productivity-wise?
I do think it's been productive on some fronts. I think, though, we missed the mark when we talk about affordability and trying to make things more affordable for folks in the state of Colorado. I don't think we got there because there have been bills that have gone through that have, like I said, increased insurance premiums, or they are bound to. I mean, we just saw a bill in appropriations today that will charge buildings $400 per year so that the Colorado Energy Office can go out and do audits of buildings and make sure they're energy efficient. I just don't understand how that is, bringing back affordability. So there are things like that are going through that I just think we missed the mark. I don't think we tackled the issue of affordability in the state of Colorado.
Especially when you bring up affordability. It reminds me of this time last year. The big story coming out of the legislature was property taxes.
Yes.
So we have a report this week saying that homeowners here in the metro area, their home values are flat, so they're not going to be getting as big of a bill as they saw in the past. And just with what we went through special session last year and all of that, does this mean that the property tax problem is solved?
I don't believe the property tax problem is solved. I don't think we cut enough in property taxes. But again, I work in the minority, and so I only have so much influence. And I was happy that we were able to at least realize some cuts in property taxes. But I don't think there's been enough cuts in property taxes. Values will continue to grow. Maybe in the Denver metro area they aren't, but up in my neck of the woods, values are still growing. If the mill levy grows as well, then property taxes will go up again. And I just don't think that's a good I just don't think that's a good position to be in. I think the other thing that's disconcerting for me within the budget, and as we go through this, is the tax credits that were passed last year are now impacting and could impact the budget in this next fiscal year because of the Tabor cap and how things work. It's kind of complicated, so I won't go into all of it. Just trust me, I'm from the government. Right? But there's a concern that we may have to use general fund monies to backfill the Homestead Exemption Act, which is something that's in our Constitution, which would, again, put even more stress and more pressure on the budget.
Okay, I have one last quick question for you.
Okay.
Now, I've asked this question of many people who've sat in that chair over the last few weeks. We've been starting to talk about 2026, and when we talk about who's going to be the next governor, your name has come up quite a bit. Are you planning to run?
Well, I am not prepared to make any announcements today. I've been working very diligently doing my job on the Joint Budget Committee as a state senator, providing, relief for Coloradoans throughout the state, making sure that priorities are funded that are the priorities of the people of the state of Colorado. And I will be probably thinking about it this summer, and we'll see. I think they all announced way too early, though.
All right, fair enough. Thank you so much for your time in the conversation. We appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Well, after the break, our analysts will be here breaking down President Trump's first 100 days in office. Welcome back. This week, President Trump crossed the 100-day mark of his second term, and he celebrated with a rally in Michigan.
After 100 days back in the White House, America is a free, proud, and sovereign nation once more, and our magnificent destiny is closer than ever before. It's closer than ever before. You have no idea how close it is.
Well, let's bring in our analysts to talk more about it. On the Democratic side, we have senior presidential and gubernatorial advisor Andy Boyan. And on the Republican side, we have the director of Advance Colorado, Michael Fields. Thanks for both being here.
Thank you.
Okay, so what do you see when we talk about the first 100 days? I want to hear from each of you the highlights and maybe some of the low points of this first benchmark of this second term. Michael, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I think Trump's first 100 days have definitely been better than Biden's last 100 days. I think there's several highs. One being the fact that people elected Donald Trump, one, to work on the economy, but two, to work on immigration. And I think if you look at border crossings, they're down. If you look at some of the drug raids that have even happened in Colorado that have been a big deal, where, deporting violent illegal immigrants, which is a good thing. I think you've seen a lot of focus on cutting waste, on economic indicators like unemployment rate is pretty low at 4.2, inflation 2.4%. These are all good numbers. I do think that there have been, you said highs and lows. On the low side, I think the tariff issue, looking at how broad it was to start out with, kind of impacting every single country out there, and then it got more targeted, got more narrow, and I think that was the better approach. And so you saw, the Trump administration kind of step back at that and say, let's make these more targeted, let's go after China. And I think, that has been a correction that has been made. And I do think when you're moving quickly, you do have to deal with, making sure procedures are right. And in a lot of these cases, there have been court cases where they say, hey, you can't do it that way, you have to do it another way. And so as you're moving quickly, people wanted the Trump administration to move quickly, but I think you can make sure that your procedures are being followed. And I think on the tariff part, definitely making sure that they're targeted tariffs. But overall, I think it's been a pretty solid 100 days, and I think the American people agree.
All right, Andy, we'll start with you. Highs and lows.
Sure. So I would say, Ashley, that these first 100 days have been sort of a study of extremes, right? He has signed the most executive orders than any modern president. He's collected the most tariffs. He's had the most lawsuits filed against him in any recent memory. He says he's off to his best start, as clearly he said in Michigan, but it's been obviously most destabilizing administration in American history, at least for the first 100 days. There's been a blitz of power grabs. There's been strategic shifts. The Mike Waltz move on Thursday, for example, of this week over to UN is just sort of an unexplainable move. There's also been direct attacks on people that have left some of his supporters stunned. I would say, he's threatened to take Greenland by force. He wants to take the Panama Canal. He wants to annex Canada. He's sort of emboldened the Department of Justice to go after his political enemies. He's removed more than 100,000 federal workers from their jobs. He has also completely destabilized the economy. To Michael's point about tariffs, he sank the economy about 2 weeks ago. The stock market took a 400-point plunge in one day. Hasn't happened since right after the Great Depression. Inflation is down thanks to Joe Biden, and unemployment is on the rise thanks to Donald Trump. Michael started off with the last 100 days of Joe Biden. I think we need to stop the love affair with Joe Biden. I think Donald Trump and Michael both need to let Joe Biden go. He was our president, and we've moved on. This is now Donald Trump's economy. This is Donald Trump's mitigated disaster. And the first 100 days have been the most disastrous in American history. And I say that not lightly, because I have school children that are going to grow up in an economy that needs jobs, that needs stabilization. And when you have a president like this, as a father, you look at this and think, I hope my kids are safe for the next 50 years, because someone like this creates havoc, wreaks havoc. We have our allies against us, not to even to say that he said he'd solve the Ukrainian-Russian war in literally one day, and it's a complete disaster. So I think it speaks for itself. Donald Trump is a disaster.
That was a lot of lows. Any highs?
Well, there are two things about that. I do think that, he has the Marco Rubio selection as Secretary of State when he's gone on more trips, I think, than any modern Secretary of State in recent history, with the exception of Hillary Clinton, has really done a lot to sort of bring a face to the nation around the world. I think Marco Rubio's selection was wise, and I think Marco Rubio is a good pick. The other piece about this that I think he's learned from his first term is to fire people as erratically as he did the first term. It will be a disaster, and so maybe he's learned a lesson. That's positive. But I think, as we've said, Mike Waltz is out, which we predicted 2 weeks ago, now UN ambassador allegedly. And I think Pete Hegseth ought to pack his bags here pretty quickly as well.
All right, thanks. Okay, so our partners at Emerson College have some brand new polling out to mark the 100 days. Shows Trump has a 45% approval rating and a 45% disapproval rating. He's down about 2 points since the last poll taken 50 days earlier. Well, let's talk about the economy. 29% think his policies are making it better. 49% think he's making it worse. That's about the same as the previous poll and similar to what we talked about here last week as well. But a significant drop here in confidence about how Trump is handling wars overseas. Approval of his handling of the Russia-Ukraine war is down 14 points to 27%, and 30% of people think he's doing a good job with the war between Israel and Hamas. That's down 8%. Andy, I'll start with you on this one. What do you take away from this batch of polling?
Sure. So not a lot has changed in the polling, really. What has dramatically changed, although overall, and I'm not a big fan of polls this early on, but I can tell you from these numbers, just the sheer numbers themselves, the White House staff should be worried. The White House staff should be thinking about where are our priorities first and where need they be second. With regard to the president saying eggs have come down 87%, which is not true. Groceries have gone up. Gas has gone up. The inability to collect unemployment has garnered some more stiff opposition, as well as, Ashley, the fact that, as I said, there's over 100,000 people that are out of a job. Unnecessarily, we cut off U.S. aid. We cut off health care to young children and young mothers who can't afford it. Like, this is a guy who's come in, wants to slash things and thinks that's a good thing. And what he's done is he's taken food away from babies. He's taken medicine away from children and mothers. And the reality of all this is that no one is willing to blame him. And in fact, his people out on the street, Gabe Evans being one of them in Colorado, are willing to preach this to people. And that's the problem with this, is that people believe whether or not he is stable or not, which I believe he's not, people are going to stand by him. And there's a certain percentage that will, and it shows in this poll.
All right, let's give Michael a chance to weigh in. What do you make of these latest numbers?
Well, 45 are really good numbers. You look at, and Andy likes to talk about, let's forget talking about Biden. Well, Biden was the leader of your party a few months ago. He was at negative 17. To be at 45 is a really solid place to be at.
Let him go, Michael.
No, but politics is about contrast, right? Like, what is your vision? That was what was going on 3-4 months ago. And then what is the vision now? I think there's a clear contrast, and people like what is going on now much more.
Not with
you
the
can sit there and rip all you want, but look at the numbers, 45. I think when you look at each individual issue, there is some movement. Obviously, everybody wants the war in Ukraine to end, and I think there is some responsibility on, especially all the responsibilities on Russia at this point. But getting them to stop that war is going to be a big thing. Economic numbers are better than they were under Biden. Polling shows that. Immigration, there's a couple other issues in there about higher education are positive. I think that people are happy that somebody's not asleep at the wheel as president, and that was what was happening for the last couple of years. So they're not going to agree with everything. You're going to have disagreements, but overall, 45, if you're a president in the polarizing times that we're in, those are solid numbers, and there's something to build off of.
Split right down the middle. Well, let's talk about another poll in the question in this poll is what I was trying to say. So it asked, knowing what you know right now, if you could go back in time, who would you vote for in the 2024 election for president? Here's the result. 93% of Harris voters would still choose Harris. 94% of Trump voters would still choose Trump, meaning he would still win the election if it were held with what you know today. Michael, I want to get your take. Is this what you would expect to see in a poll like this?
I think this is the essential question of, again, politics is about contrast. Is it your party or is it this party that's in power? You still have, it's a close number. The election was close, but people are still saying, I would have voted for Donald Trump over Harris. That's how the outcome happened. And as much as, there's going to be bad media stories, as much as Andy wants to sit here and have a list of 100 things that he doesn't like what's going on, the American people are still happy with their decision. And that is going to be informative as we go along on the next midterm election, right? Do you believe that Democrats are, have the best interest for you? Are they, are costs going down? Are all these things? You can disagree with the president's policies, and there's some that I disagree with, and some of the American people do, but that doesn't mean that the other alternative is any better. And you have the Biden-Harris, group of people who are still trying to defend these policies. That's not going to go well come the midterm. So I think when you look at it, that is the essential question. Would you re-vote the way that you did? And the American people say yes.
All right, you got about a minute for the closing word here, Andy.
Sure. A couple of things about that I think are interesting. One is that obviously the numbers for Harris have still held up, despite the fact that she's been sort of out of public view for 100 days. She's been off the campaign trail and has been out of public view until last night, actually, when she delivered a speech in San Francisco. So to that end, I think it's interesting that her numbers held up strong. The numbers with Trump, I think, are interesting. Listen, he has a cult following, and I understand that. And there are people that believe in him, and he's always, keep this in mind, he's 100 days in office. So this isn't like a 4-year term where we're looking even close to midterms yet. I think to Michael's point, politics is about contrast, but it's also about compromise. And it's also about trying to figure out a way to do business together. We know that in the state of Colorado, and we know that nationally. And I think what's happening is we're becoming more polarized. We've talked about this before. And what this poll shows is that the nation is more polarized than ever. And part of the president's job is compromiser in chief. He's failed.
All right. Thank you both for the conversation. We'll be right back. Welcome back. We still don't know where President Trump stands when it comes to Space Command. Alabama lawmakers are saying this week Trump has not moved it from Colorado to their state because senators have not confirmed President Trump's nominee to lead the Air Force yet. Right now, Space Command's home is Peterson Space Force Base in Colorado Springs. Colorado Congressman Jeff Crank says it doesn't make sense to move it and that doing so would be for political reasons and not military ones. Well, thanks for joining in on the conversation. For Colorado Point of View, I'm Ashley Michaels. We'll see you right back here next week.